Raise your hand if you've ever procrastinated. Okay, we see you. We know it's all of you. So go ahead and stick around for this episode because we're going to be sharing tips on how you can finally put an end to procrastination. Hey, we're Britt and Chris Carmichael, and you're listening to the Elevated Life Podcast. Throughout the 13 years we've been together, we've never ceased in our endless quest to better ourselves.
We've studied top experts, philosophers, and gurus. After years of personal self-experimentation, we found the tools for shifting your beliefs, moving through fears, and developing a positive mindset.
If you're ready for a breakthrough, then you're in the right place because we're here to empower you to take control of your life with simple mindset shifts that create radical transformation.
We'll be diving into topics like personal growth, health, philosophy, spirituality, relationships, success, and mindfulness.
So create some space for yourself and get comfy. It's time to become the badass you were born to be. So we're all guilty of procrastinating on one thing or another in our life, especially when it comes to really big goals and dreams in our life. I feel like sometimes the bigger the goal, the more procrastination seems to show up. So I want to dive into the why, the how, the what, and how can we overcome it? What are some actionable steps to get us through the process of procrastination? So why? Why do we do this to ourselves?
I think a lot of times it ends up being that when we think about our goals, we don't always think about the work that's included with them. I think sometimes it's really easy to get overwhelmed by the amount of stuff that you have to do. I remember when I was a kid and everyone wanted to be, we wanted to be a politician. I think it was like a police officer, fireman, or you want to be an athlete or a doctor. And when you think about all of those professions, it's a lot. Those people do a lot. There's a ton of prep work. Some people are getting shot at. I mean, it's like there's so much that goes into it that you don't consider. So a lot of times when we're thinking about our goals, we have to be thinking about what does this involve? And is this something that I want to get involved in? And all big decisions, even all small decisions ought to have this. What are the repercussions? What am I going to have to do? Sometimes when we go out and buy stuff or we're walking through Target and Britt's literally going up and down every single aisle, I'm thinking how long before we end up getting rid of this thing that she's about to buy? Will we be doing that? Is it something that we really like in this moment, or is it something that we're really going to like for a long time? And if it is something that you're going to like for a long time, then you might be willing to do the work. Relationships are work. Having kids is a lot of work. Having your own business, it's a lot of work. So a lot of these things are going to entail doing activities that aren't particularly fun or that you may not enjoy. And I think that knowing that from the get-go and saying, okay, I realize that's going to be part of it, can set you up in a way so that you know that there are going to be obstacles, but those are okay because it's worth it in the long end.
I think I'm going to change my new big goal to eating a cupcake.
Oh my gosh.
Because I could really follow through on that. Oh my gosh. No, but seriously, when it comes to procrastination, another thing that I feel like, stops people from going after their goals is either they didn't pick a good enough goal or their goal is so good that it scares the hell out of them and fear stops them from even taking that first step.
Yeah, a lot of that has to do with self-worth. I think that starts to tap into self-worth. And the real reason why people procrastinate, the real reason is that a lot of times people are perfectionists and they've been rewarded when they were younger only when they did something perfectly. And in the beginning, when you're doing something, what happens is you fail a lot because it's new to you. The first few recipes that you're going to make are going to suck. The first few photos that you take are going to, the first 10,000 that you take are probably going to suck. And that's just the way it is with almost every single thing that you learn or try for the first few times. Relationships, same way. It's just, there are different parts that take more gusto and effort in life. And I think that you have to realize that if you don't feel like you deserve it from the beginning, it's almost going to be impossible for you to have it in the end because you're going to have your subconscious that's constantly telling you hey, you don't deserve this. And so you won't be excited to wake up in the morning. You won't go do those tasks that you need to do. You won't show up as 100% of yourself because you'll be thinking, well, this is probably really not for me. Well, it was hard in the beginning, so I didn't do it. Well, that door of opportunity closed up. That first door that I went and knocked on closed. So, the universe must not want me to have it. That's just like a BS game excuse thing that we play with ourselves. And it always keeps us from our excellence because you got to knock a lot. Sometimes you got to knock till you break your hand.
And or if you're me, I'll just break the whole damn door down.
And sometimes you realize that when you knock a lot and you've been knocking a lot, the door opens, like swings open toward you instead of pushing toward out. And so you have to determine.
Oh, tell them the story about the time that I first went to your house with the door.
All right, talking about messing it up early in the beginning. So I take Britt early on to when we first got in the relationship over to my mom's house. We were showing up late at night. We had to grab something from there.
We're getting towels.
All right, we're getting towels for whatever reason you would need towels. And so we're going there, but it's later. And I'm like, hey, listen, you're going to have to be quiet when we go in here because my parents are probably sleeping and it's dark and I'm just going to maneuver real quick. It'll be real easy, real quick in and out. We won't even see them. It'll be fine. So we take Britt in. I go into the house. And we've got a screen door, but it's a glass screen door that you open up, and then you have the regular door. And so I open both. Britt comes in, follows me. I have her wait in the entryway, and I go to grab stuff. I'm like, all right, I got the towels. We're ready. We're going to have on. This is going to be a fun night. And then I hear Britt rip roar through the glass screen door. And not only does she hit it, she pulls the entire door off of the hinges. And here comes my stepdad out in his skivvies. And he hops over the dog gate thinking that someone's breaking in. He's freaking out.
I'm pretty sure he had a gun.
It's crazy.
I just knocked the fucking door completely off the tracks. And that's what I'm talking about. Sometimes you just have to bust through.
You have to. And you have to realize that there's not another way sometimes. Sometimes you're not going to out clever it. You just have to lean forward and go for it. So when you're thinking about being a perfectionist, which again is one of the biggest reasons why people procrastinate, what happens is when we have a little bit of failure, we get frustrated. In that moment of frustration, we get angry with ourselves, and then we tell that story of hey, we can't do this. And so what that ends up making us do is that when we need to do a task that would happen to help push our dream forward, we pause on it because we're not feeling up to it, because we've been frustrated and angry, and those two emotions don't typically lead to fantastic work. And so what ends up, that becomes the cycle. You procrastinate, it makes you frustrated. You get angry, you procrastinate. And that cycle keeps spinning and spinning and spinning. Instead, if you just took a calm approach to it and realized that failure was part of that process, a lot of times you'd be able to move further forward in whatever it is you're doing.
Well, speaking of perfectionism, if you're on the self-sabotaging cycle, we actually have an entire free masterclass. If you've ever been curious about joining the Elevated Life Club, we created a special offer just for you to check out the Perfectionism Masterclass inside the club, so that not only can you take away the wisdom that was so life-changing for the elevators, that this is the thing that everyone gets stuck on. Everyone gets stuck on this perfectionism. I think it's built into our culture and our society and the way that we operate. And that leads to this repetitive cycle of self-sabotage and procrastination, so that we never actually move forward and we only make ourselves feel worse. So we're actually not doing anything more. We're just creating more of that bad feeling. So if you've ever been stuck by your own self-doubt or that perfectionism, then I highly recommend you go check out the masterclass by going to theelevatedlifeclub.com/masterclass. That's going to get you access to a free entire training inside the club where we guide you through the meditations that help to create the change on a subconscious level.
Yeah, this is huge. I mean, if you're beating yourself about something inside your head, especially if it's about something that you're originally excited about, it's going to be really tough to do it. It's like trying to run with a weight vest on or something. It's harder. It's just making everything harder. And so come in there. If you have that problem, come join us. I mean, hell, it's free. Just sign up for that and be on your way and get rid of that self-critic. I think a lot of that ends up having to do with having a self-critic and having that person constantly just nag at you all the time to where it's difficult to take any kind of action.
Well, that's why there's no follow-through, because the internal dialogue is you suck, you're never going to do this. Why are you even trying?
Yeah, we'll get rid of that.
Yeah.
That'll be gone. After the masterclass, it'll either be gone or extremely reduced. So yeah, definitely get in on that.
I love that. So let's talk about overcoming procrastination itself. Obviously, we're going to give them access to the free class inside the club on perfectionism. But how can we overcome procrastination? When I was thinking about what are the action tip takeaways, the first thing that came to my mind was your simple, if it takes less than 5 minutes, do it now, or 2 minutes, or whatever the hell. If it's 2 minutes, do 2 minutes. Okay. I thought so. Well, look, I've upgraded. If it takes even 5 minutes, I'll do it now. But that really has helped me to just like eat that frog, like Brian Tracy says. Just do the thing that you need to do right now and don't put it off.
Yeah, that's one of the most important factors in success period, is that being able to determine what's important or not. And I think that's part of the first step, is you have to really map out everything that you want to do. You have to map out what the steps are so that you know what to do next and you don't end up in a moment of confusion. Once you have the map laid out, then you know where the next part is to go. If you were trying to drive somewhere, you would know where to turn next. And then once you get to this next street, now you got to turn there. And it makes the drive so much more obvious and you can relax. So if you've mapped it out already, then that is what you have to do. You have to do that next step and you have to put it first. And a lot of times we build up steps in our head to make them sound hard. Like, oh my God, it's going to be so hard. When really it's going to take like a phone call. Or it's going to take us writing one email. Like, how hard is it going to take? What are you going to spend? What's the most you've ever spent really on an okay email? Well, the most, like an hour, 30 minutes. So you're going to let your whole dream be on pause because you didn't have 30 minutes or an hour? It's really not that long a time. But there's so many other ones that are going to take only a minute or two. And so you want to tackle those immediately, especially if they're important. So always be thinking of what is the most important thing and am I doing that most important thing? If you can ask yourself that all day long and you're getting those things done, guess what ends up happening? You didn't have time to procrastinate because you're doing stuff. Action always trumps procrastination.
And think about the overthinkers though, like, okay, well, is this the most important task? Am I doing it right? You have to like find that balance. And I really feel like the way to do that is, for me, I always guide my clients when I'm coaching them to map out the next 5 steps. Like realistically, even if you don't know even if you don't know the full spectrum, if you mapped out the next 5 possible steps to move you forward towards your goal or whatever that dream is, if you could just write them down, if you even just pretended like you knew what they were and you wrote them down, all you have to do is take step 1. So it's not about knowing step 100. It's about getting clear on the first step and then having the courage to take that first step, and that action, like you said, is what moves the needle forward. It's not just about knowing or thinking about it. And so for me, I like to write down top 5 steps. What do I need to do next? And then here's where I really feel like this is the game changer. Plug it into the calendar. Give yourself a date. Don't just say, okay, yeah, I have this cool side project dream that I want to create, and I know the first step is making that phone call or writing that email. If you don't plug it into your calendar, into your schedule, like it's an appointment, you're never going to do it. It's going to sit in that little idea journal or on that sticky note. So my advice to you to beat the procrastination is come up with the next 5 things you know you're meant to do to move you forward, write it in the calendar as a scheduled date, and then show the fuck up.
You know what's weird is that I feel like we all know to go step by step. That we all know that if we take little bitty steps doing something, that becomes so much easier. But so few people actually will put pen down to paper and do it. Every single person ought to have some sort of a journal or some sort of notes or something where it talks about the big things in your life. Like, what are you doing in business? Like, what are you doing in your relationship? Like, what are you doing for your self-care? What are your hobbies? Or, and coming out with a plan of like how to do those better. Like, there should be a little bitty plan where you have those 5 steps written down. Because if you write a bunch of steps, you overcomplicate it and you overthought it. Most things in life are fairly simple. They're a lot more straightforward than we give them credit to be, credit for having doing. And we have to come to a place where we realize that everything's not hard. If you're always saying, oh my God, it's too hard. Oh man, I'll never be able to do that. That's just way over too complicated. You're complicating it. The only thing that's hard or complicated is your attitude. And so if you can show up with an open mind and say like, well, what do I do to make this easy?
Yeah, let it be easy.
Has anybody else ever made this easy? And if they have, can I talk to them? Can I email them? Can I DM them? Can I get in front of their faces?
Can I read their book?
Yeah, and if that's possible, then hell, you got to be doing that. Find that person. They will be able to guide you in the way that you need. And so it's so much better once we've started mapping it out and once we've started to do the most important thing. And now that we've added to the calendar, we've got that by when. Without a sense of urgency, the human mind doesn't care. It doesn't. So many people will only do things that they have to. That's why there's a check engine light inside your car. It's like the Mayday, like, hey, you should have had this already fixed, but now it's a problem. Hey, it's a problem. Hey, it's a problem. And so don't wait for that. Don't wait for that. It's a problem. If you load it into your calendar, what you're saying to yourself is, I'm going to take time out of my day. Because any project that you have, anything that you have to do separate from what you normally do, is going to take away from your life in some way. You're going to have to watch less shows. You're going to have to not scroll so much on social media. You're going to have to sleep a little less. Whatever it is, you're going to have to realize that you're going to have to carve out time. And by taking the physical action of carving out the time and then having the notification come on and say, hey, you're supposed to do this at this time, and then committing to the self-discipline to do it, you can defeat perfectionism and you can defeat procrastination, and you can feel like anything that you set your mind to, you can accomplish. But without setting up with these steps, it will always seem unclear. It will always seem confusing. And that's what always ends up leading to people not doing it. Because they're like, well, I don't know what to do. I didn't know. I sat down at my desk and I just opened up the browser and then I didn't know what to do.
So I scrolled.
Yeah.
I think I'm going to stick with the cupcake goal.
Cupcake goal.
It sounds very doable. For any of you who don't know, I'm on an 8-week health journey of being mindful about the amount of calories that I'm eating. I'm doing a butt camp challenge, so I'm working out like 5 days a week, doing cardio every day. So this has been a topic of conversation and has required a lot of discipline. And I'm pretty proud of myself for not eating the cupcakes. But they're obviously on my mind.
And I think that's another big part, is that a lot of times when you watch someone who's successful, it looks like it's easy. And it only looks like it's easy because they're not telling you what's going on in their head. Like, give me the cupcake. I don't want to be jogging. I don't want to be working out right now. I don't want to be meal prepping. I just want to be relaxed on the couch. I've worked really hard this week. And what you find is that a lot of successful people have kind of given up those excuses, and how big that goal is and what they're thinking about becomes the motivating driving force. So it doesn't matter if you felt tired. It doesn't matter that it was a little bit more difficult. It doesn't matter that you had to stay an hour late. Like, that's the cost of being great at something. It's going to take away some portion of your life, and it's going to add in value in other spots. So some things you're just going to have to buck up.
Yeah, you have to focus on the goal and not what you're losing in the moment.
Yeah, sometimes you got to put on your big boy pants and just decide, like, hey, this is for me and I'm going to do it, and not turn back, and have that internal drive that says, I can do this. So much about accomplishing things or being successful at something is an internal monologue that you have with yourself that just constantly says, this is what I'm doing, this is what I stand for, and I'm going to do it no matter what, and keeping that on repeat. And then the goal becomes a little bit easier. It doesn't mean you don't have the thoughts. I mean, Britt's over here having the thoughts, and I guarantee you she's in this. I mean, she's doing it. And so
I'm going to win.
The thoughts will still come up, and that's okay. You just don't give focus to them all the time. Like, that's why people stop. It's because they gave focus to the wrong thoughts. And so think about what it is that you've been focusing on lately. And have they been thoughts that have brought you down, or have they been thoughts that have built you up, or where are you in that? And if you're in a place that's been dodgy and you're like, man, that's not supporting me, how am I ever going to do this? Like, we should all want health. Like, you feel good. It feels good to feel good. And so to come into a place where you say, but it's going to cost me a little bit. I'm going to have to give up some of the conveniences that I had, or I'm going to have to spend a little time doing this, or I've got to rearrange my entire week, which is what we've had to do. All the mornings are different. All the evenings are different. The entire structure of the week plan is different. You're going to have to make changes, and it's not always comfortable in the beginning, and you're probably going to make mistakes. We definitely did. You're on what?
The third week?
It's been several weeks now, and the first couple of weeks we just kept messing up. And it's okay. So what? You messed up a little bit. It doesn't mean you stop. You pause, you regroup, you say, okay, how can we do this better? How can we do this better for next week? How can we make sure that this is easier? Man, I was really drained on Thursday. What do we need to do on Wednesday to make sure that I'm not feeling it on the next day? And so it's figuring out where the slumps are. But if you procrastinate, or if you give your excuse, it's over. Like, you shot yourself down. You didn't give yourself a chance to succeed. And so it's really important to mind that self-talk and to get to a place where you realize, like, I'm running so much of the show. And if I'm going to support myself and I'm going to do great things in my life, or things that are meaningful to me, I'm going to have to really listen to what's going on in there. And I'm either going to have to not give it focus when it's bad, or I'm going to have to control it by overriding it with good implications or good thoughts about myself.
The discipline that it requires to go after goals like that require change and having to restructure your life makes me think of that exercise where you write a check to a charity that you don't, or like to a charity that you don't want to support, basically, kind of thing, which seems weird. Because if it's a charity, you probably probably you do want to support, but whatever, you get the point. Like you write a huge number amount, like 10 grand to this person or this thing I don't like, and you give it to a friend for accountability. Like if I don't meet my goal, then you can cash that check into something that's like not in alignment with what feels good for me. Because money's a big motivator. I keep telling myself 20K, I'm winning 20K. If I stick to this, I'm winning 20K. But the real truth is I'm having a nice ass and have a really good workout, meal prep, health routine at the end of this 8 weeks, which is really what I think is the biggest goal and blessing. But 20K would be nice.
Yeah, and I recommend, one thing we do in the membership club every month is we do big challenges. We're always trying to get our elevators to get a little outside their comfort zone and try to do life slightly different, because the more often you do that, you kind of realize like where you've been holding yourself back. And to watch Britt do a challenge, if you haven't done a challenge in a while, do a challenge. I mean, do something. Do a yoga challenge or a meditation challenge or something like that, just to get you fired up again and to kind of make you a little bit uncomfortable. I think being a little bit uncomfortable often enough in your life makes it easier to get through some of the things that are really hard in life, some of the things that we know that we have to eventually face. And doing challenges and kind of pushing yourself out a little bit will get you thinking in new ways. And a lot of times you also meet some cool people along the way because they're doing it too, and you kind of both in the foxhole together, and you're able to explain like, well, this is what I'm going through. And what you end up noticing is that it's the power of the story as you transform that really helps other people. We were just recently talking on the podcast about influence and being able to lead by example. And so overcoming procrastination so that you can get to your goal, and ditching perfectionism because you realize that you're just doing this for you instead of doing it for everybody else will change how you relate to other people, and you'll begin to be that example that influences other people without having to intentionally do it.
And it's so funny because when you really think about going after your goals or living a great life or your dream life or whatever the case may be, it really does boil down to the basics of health and happiness, And I feel like that's what I've been prioritizing the most in my life. I've got like 18 million empire building dream ideas for our business, but it's like, what is most important? And if our just like baseline of health and happiness isn't on point, it just makes everything a little bit harder. And this is, this conversation is about invoking ease. And so I feel like if you're procrastinating on something, take it back all the way down to, where are you procrastinating in your own self-care routines or your own health habits or, the way that you're thinking and approaching things, your attitude and your mindset. I feel like it really does boil down to the basics of how we operate. And if we can knock out just like the standard, eating clean, moving our body, drinking enough water, bringing joy into our life. If we can knock those out, it's like you said, Sarah said to you, like, wow, Britt's really like firing on all cylinders right now. And you said, yeah, when she eats right and she moves around, like she exercises, shit starts happening. And I feel like if you're stuck in your goal in your business, then maybe it's time to shift your focus on your health and your personal well-being. Because I always find that when I do make those shifts and I'm not so heavy business oriented and going after my goals and making new products and programs or hosting this retreat or whatever, I find that when I shifted the gears towards my own health and well-being, everything else seems to magically manifest as well and grow. So I don't know, maybe this is a call for someone who's been slamming their head up against a wall in business goals, but really the call is to look at your own personal health goals.
It's one of the things I love about coaching people, because a lot of times people sign up for coaching because they want to make more money. Like that's like one of the main reasons is like they want to help their business or whatever. And it's funny because a lot of times what we end up focusing on, you realize that they've got kind of the business side nailed. They just maybe like a little bit off, but a lot of times they have something that's going on their internal life. And whether that is that they're not getting any movement, they're something's going on with their relationship at home. Like you figure out that it's something else, and then you end up working on that, and then it improves the business. It's like there are pieces of our lives that have really big impacts on the other parts that we don't necessarily realize. So sometimes swapping a goal or just putting more emphasis on one thing, especially when it's yourself and your health, can really pay dividends on what you're doing in all the other corners.
So true. One small ripple effect in one area just like covers the whole gamut of your entire life and how you show up in business too.
What else I noticed, and this will be the last thing I'll leave you with, is that when you're super focused on business, a lot of times what ends up happening is you're thinking a lot. So you're trying to come up with a new idea, or you're trying to come up with way to make the old idea work. And so it's all these thoughts that you're having. And a lot of times when you swap goals and begin focusing on something else, because you're not thinking about the business as much, a lot of times the answer that you couldn't see will show up because you're not clouding it with all the extra thoughts or all the opinions of people or all the books that you've been reading. It's kind of always been there, and you knew it, but you didn't focus on it. And so when you go onto this other side and you're like, well, I'm going to improve this area of my life. I can really use some effort over here. That just kind of shows itself. And I feel like that's what's happening with us right now. Even though, I mean, our business is doing fantastic. It's just that we have new ideas now because we're focused on something different. Mm-hmm. It's weird how that happens. It's indirect.
Yeah, it's like
subtle.
It's ready for change. And so when you're in that moment of like lack of clarity or transition, people start to freak out and they fall back on old ways of being, or fear comes up. And for me, I just like to focus on my personal health when I'm in those transitions of I'm not exactly sure what I'm meant to be doing next, even though obviously we're hosting our Evolved Couples Retreat now on 2/22/22. I'm so excited about this magical new date next year. But obviously we do have great business goals and things that we're focusing on, but I just feel beyond the things that we already have mapped out and planned, there's so much being called to change and shift. And so when I'm in that like transition period, for me, instead of freaking out, I like to focus on, what I can control. And that's what I'm putting in my body, how I'm using the energy, and what makes me feel good.
It's going to be a hell of a year.
I'm so excited. So if you haven't heard the news, the new magical dates of the Evolved Couples Retreat is going to be on 2/22/2022. And it's on a Tuesday. So it really is going to be a Tuesday, if that makes sense.
Oh my gosh.
In numerology, twos are all about partnership and connection and intimacy. So this seems like the most magical date we could host this 5-day transformational experience.
Yeah, it's just, being right after Valentine's Day, it's going to be such a great time to recommit to our relationships. Once we've gotten like through this end of the year and we commit to ourselves and we commit to our self-care and where our health is at, the next thing we really want to focus on is where is our relationship? Like, how are we in with our partner? And if you don't have a partner, this is something to start thinking about. What's your relationship with yourself? And what are the prospects that you have out there, and are you interested in them? And like, what are they really representing for you, and how can they push your life forward? But if you have that extra special somebody and your relationship really either hasn't gone where you want it to, maybe you've changed some, or maybe you've kind of updated your self-worth and integrity and you want your relationship to blossom the same way, this is going to be excellent for you. But if you're already really hitting it and this is going to be something to soar you even more. I think the level of connection that we can bring about in a few days and some of the changes that we can impact by being together for that amount of time is extremely powerful and extremely beneficial for creating that long-lasting love that I know that we're all really here for.
And it doesn't hurt that it's in a freaking 3-story luxury beachfront villa in Destin, Florida. I mean, when I was planning out like what's the most romantic thing, the first thing for me came to mind was going to the beach and taking those nice romantic walks. So I'm just super excited about, the direction and changes that are coming about because we've been focusing on, what brings us the most joy. And I feel like procrastination comes up when you're not following what lights you up. And so if it's time to pivot, if you have been in a rut, if you've been feeling a lack of inspiration, then maybe this conversation is that spark for you to pivot or shift or make some changes and call something new into your life. Or if you have a big goal, but maybe fear's been stopping you from moving towards it and taking that next step, then let this be your reminder that you are here to do something great, that freaking greatness doesn't come overnight. It can feel effortless if you allow it, but it does take work. And if you choose a goal that brings you joy, the work is always worth it. Until next time, we'll see you later. Peace. Thanks so much for tuning in to the Elevated Life podcast. Want more? Join us at theelevatedlifeclub.com for mindset upgrades, lifestyle hacks, and spiritual tools to elevate your soul.
Each month features a new masterclass, meditation, yoga practice, and more to help you transform your life one step at a time.
Come join the 7 or Above Club.